Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Darren Crawley. I'm Head of Cloud Services here at Ascari in the United Kingdom. I understand it's 10 o'clock in the morning over in the US. I'd like to thank you for joining our webinar today and to welcome you to what will be, I hope, a relatively short but punchy webinar where we can share with you some of our findings in connection with the impact of Covid-19, but more importantly, what businesses both in the USA and further afield can learn from some of the experiences over the last 6 to 7 months. Just to give you a little bit of background, I have worked in business-to-business sales and account management for the last 3 decades in a number of environments, recruitment, media, telecommunications, and for the majority of the last decade in ERP software and cloud solutions. So I'm hoping to give you some insight into what's preceded the COVID crisis, as well as some observations on what's happened in the past few months. But most significantly of all, hopefully I can offer my 10 cents worth in terms of what the future holds, both in late 2020 and much further beyond that. As I mentioned, I work for Ascari. We're a United Kingdom SAP Business One Gold Partner, but I'm actually responsible for our Cloud for Partners service, which we provide globally to resellers of SAP Business One. And some of the source material for today's event has been gleaned from a number of areas, particularly online, thanks to organizations like Gartner, magazines such as ERP Today, LinkedIn content, and also from Forbes online. So I hope you find some of this valuable and some of the messaging that's coming out of it useful as we move forwards in what is a very uncertain period of time. Today's agenda really is just a case of looking at 3 key areas, examining some of the things that we've done as a business community traditionally in the past. Also taking a closer look at what in effect has happened over the last 6 months or so, and also really looking at what's going to happen next. So we're looking very much at past, present and future. If I take a look at my own experience of working with businesses that use SAP Business One enterprise resource planning software, it's interesting to take a snapshot of what's been the traditional use of technology by these users of this software product. It's very much geared towards what we call small to medium sized enterprises. And the best way I can actually explain this is probably if you have an image of an inverted triangle in your mind. So if at the top of that triangle you have a broad base of companies that traditionally use the key modules of SAP Business One, financial or accounting modules, sales, CRM, tend to be used very heavily as companies take that journey from invoice to cash. Now, interestingly enough, preceding the use of this type of technology, smaller businesses might use traditional accounting software, whether it's Sage or maybe online disruptors like QuickBooks. But what you tend to find is companies, when they go towards an ERP solution, then look at what goes beyond those basic financial and accounts activities. And other aspects of ERP solutions, such as Business One, can assist. Things like analytics, inventory management, including the purchasing functions. A key aspect is reporting. And obviously over the last, say, 10 to 15 years, mobility has become more and more significant with the advent of the iPhone and Android devices. So people want their software to be deliverable on their phone. In addition to that, there are other products that are developed which can be vertical market driven, whether it's manufacturing, wholesale and distribution, or retail. And these things can be developed on this type of software, either through software development kits that are built in, or more often than not, a third-party collaborator who's approved by the software vendor. And in SAP Business One's case, that's over 500 companies and products worldwide. These can be incorporated and integrated into the main software products. Finally, traditionally, what tends to happen is that the user of the software will tend to have a look at whether they want to deploy on-premise or in cloud. Now, historically, with ERP solutions, and in particular SAP Business One, a lot of companies, particularly smaller enterprises, have tended to rely on a server approach, a hardware-based approach, where something is physically installed in the office or in the warehouse or in the factory. And there has been a shift away from that. So if we actually look at pre-COVID-19, I was actually speaking to a forum of partners in Europe in late 2019, early 2020. And we're already seeing some key drivers away from on-premise into a cloud environment. And why is that, you say? Well, simply users in their business lives have actually been mirroring their consumer habits in the office or the workplace. So if you look at, for instance, what we do now with our mobile phones, we subscribe to Netflix, we use Apple Music, we also more recently have started subscribing to Disney Plus, but even predating those, you had YouTube, and going outside of video streaming or media streaming. You know, if you look at things like banking applications, who goes to the branch anymore? People can cash a check using an app on their phone. So all of this stuff is basically a representation of more cloud usage in our personal lives. But that's now translated into business activity as well. And that's partly because also vendors have been driving it as well. So people like SAP, Microsoft, Google, HP, IBM, Oracle, all of these major names in IT have actually been promoting cloud deployments and increasing cloud utilization. So that technology trend is on that roll. Now, this is the situation that was already in play pre-COVID-19. And the best way I could summarize things is that although change was happening, and in some places it was faster than others, that smoldering fire has literally had gasoline poured onto it with the COVID-19 crisis. And a lot of organizations sought in the last 6 months or so to actually pivot very, very rapidly from an on-premise in workplace working environment to a cloud-based environment where their employees can access their computer systems and their software applications anytime, any place, and anywhere. All you need is a laptop and a mobile phone, and in some instances, just the latter. So there has been that accelerant that's been taking place, and we anticipate that is something that's going to continue and gain momentum even further. So if we look at what's actually happened in the last 6 months or so, it really has been a game changer. Like I say, I've been involved in business-to-business sales and account management for 3 decades. If I go back, the only thing that's been comparable to 2020 was September the 11th, 2001. So obviously there are parallels there in terms of the shock waves, but the key difference in 2020 is whilst one major event had a ripple effect across the whole world and shaped the world thereafter, what we've got with the current situation in 2020 is an unprecedented pandemic, a global pandemic, which has actually left nobody untouched, no matter where you are in the world, or very few. Coupled to that, you've got the worst economic recession that's taken place in the last 3 centuries. Tied to that, you've got racial and political tensions. And right at the back of all of that, which was actually already in people's minds to a great degree pre-COVID-19, is the issue of climate change as well. So we have what I would call the perfect storm, and that's creating both in individuals and organizations a heightened sense of vigilance. But if we also look at the situation, we have actually had a position as business professionals to take a step back and to press the reset button. And now we're actually looking at what do we do next? As basic survival, economic survival, turns into how do we renew our activities? How do we renew our businesses? How do we renew our society? And there's a number of things that come into play there. And some of those are pretty basic survival instincts, managing the chaos that we go through, cleaning up after the storm. But there's also the norming and conforming. So it takes a period of time to change a habit permanently. And we've had a long period of time now to actually work differently, adjust our priorities, find a new sense of purpose, and discover new ways of looking at the world and our businesses. And those lead to behavioural changes that reveal both opportunities and also risks. And our aim today is basically to see how we can actually help pursue those opportunities more effectively. And of course, as business professionals, we have to take on leadership and purpose as we emerge from COVID-19 in the first wave of what's affected the global environment. So one of the things I think is key is rather than actually following and joining in our peers and doing the same, maybe we should challenge consensus culture more. Disruptors have always been there in whatever industry we care to look at, but more so in the last 5 to 10 years. But as I mentioned already, lockdown has allowed a rare period of introspection for a lot of business leaders. And now we're actually looking at new ways to actually approach our markets, or even new markets, or even go into completely different areas of business activity. And the most important thing is the ability to be agile, to make changes that have real effect as quickly and effectively as possible. And when we look at agility and where it actually counts the most, there's a number of areas that are certainly relevant, and we're to a certain extent, we're relevant pre-COVID-19. If we look at automation, we all knew about the possibility of automated autonomous vehicles coming into play, particularly coupled to 5G cellular technology. So if you look, and artificial intelligence. So if you're looking at things like delivery vans, taxis, even private vehicles, automobiles and drones, all of these things potentially could be operating without human control or input. But even if we look at industry-specific aspects, I remember seeing on a LinkedIn post recently where if you look at a labour-intensive environment like fruit picking in agriculture, previously a machine could not pick a raspberry or a strawberry from its place on the plant. But now we're actually seeing the development of highly autonomous, backed by artificial intelligence robotics that can actually have the sensitivity and capability to be precise enough to take a piece of soft fruit from the plant. And what we're looking at there in terms of productivity has always been a key question in various territories. The The United States historically has done very well. If you look at the United Kingdom, less so, where I'm based. And what we tend to find is the common thread tends to be a reliance on what we would call arms and legs type activities. Cheap labour also comes into play, where that can sometimes put back the amount or the timing of investments in technology. So if we think of things like manufacturing or agriculture, those type of industries traditionally rely on arms and legs rather than automation and technology. Well, that could well be changing now. And the reason for that is if we look at a critical point of failure in businesses over the last 6 to 7 months, that critical or key point of failure has been people. Now, I'm not being harsh. People are also the key strength of any organization and business. If you look at their talent and their energy, without those people contributing to a business function, there is no business. But people are biologically susceptible to a virus. So what happens? We have to take the people away, we have to lock down, we have to quarantine people. And what happens? Business doesn't happen because there is no way of automation, of replicating those people in the workplace. The other point as well is that if you're relying on people to come through the door, whether they be customers in a retail environment, or if they're actually your employees that have to come in the door to actually do something at the office or in the warehouse, again, by having that particular component removed, it leads to a rapid slowdown in business or even a full stop. And that can't be sustainable in the post-COVID world. We have to look at ways to actually change that and make that less of a vulnerability for businesses of whatever industry. Now, one of the things we can also do is when we go back to agility, if we look at the deployment of people, you're looking at things like technology. What can you use on your home laptop in terms of software? What does that do when it integrates back into the main system for the business? And also, how flexible can you have people working from home, working with a laptop or a mobile? And a lot of these are based very heavily on what we would call the knowledge economy. So driving greater levels of employee education and skill, utilizing technology. All of these are going to be key components. And from my own experience, if we look at the productivity list there, the country that's achieved that most recently has been Ireland, where there's been an investment, very heavy investment in people, in terms of education, but also in technology as well. So what I thought would be a good idea was actually just to see if there was any questions in connection with what's been presented today. The Cloud for Partners website, if you'd like to take a close look at who we are and what we do, is www.mycloudforpartners.com. In addition as well, if you have any specific questions about what we do, who we work with, how we can potentially help yourselves or your peers, please do drop me an email or send me some further information, and we'd be delighted to pick up after today's event. Alternatively, please do pick up the phone. It's great to speak to people. I mentioned that there's a leadership and purpose imperative on all of us, but the important thing as well is collaboration, and we're always there ready to pick up the phone, speak to businesses, whether they be in Europe, in USA, even further afield. We are a global company and an agile company. Just to give you some insight into what we do as the day job goes, we actually work with all resellers of SAP Business One globally. I know in the United States, there's over 60 SAP Business One partners, and we work with many of those. And in fact, only recently, we've actually helped them to utilize a brand new data center based in Virginia on Amazon Web Services. And that, coupled to some initiatives we've run in-house, has enabled us to actually give businesses in the USA the capability to deploy users of SAP Business One in the cloud literally the same day. And that's going back to what I was just saying about agility and innovation. So if you know of anyone who would benefit from that type of capability, please do let us know. It's a case of we always like to see who we can assist and work with and collaborate with. And when I mention collaboration, again, if you go to our Cloud for Partners website, you'll actually see what we call our digital marketplace, where we've collaborated with many leading companies in the business software environment, whether it's e-commerce, data integration, manufacturing, wholesale and distribution. We have the ability to actually deploy not just SAP Business One in the cloud very quickly, but also integrate into some of the leading business applications that work alongside it. So please do let us know if there's anything we can do to help. One thing I would also say is if you work with a particular partner, we'd love to have an intro and talk to them as well. So if you do feel there's any way we can actually assist each other mutually, always looking to have that conversation. There is a chat box. I've not actually seen any information come through so far to suggest there's any immediate questions. Nevertheless, please do bear this information in mind. We have recorded the webinar for today, so I will make sure that that's available on our dedicated YouTube channel for Cloud for Partners, and it will also be available through my feed on LinkedIn, as well as through the Ascari and Cloud for Partners LinkedIn and Twitter pages. So if there aren't any further questions or any observations of today, I wish you well for the future. As I've mentioned, there are more opportunities than threats, so let's focus on those opportunities and how we can all collaborate together to make an impact and make, hopefully, 2021 a much better year for everybody. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.